Deep in the uncharted outer ring of the Orion sector, the human scout ship Indigo Wasp drifted silently through the darkness of space, its hull camouflaged by a layered cloak of refracted starlight. Inside, Commander Lyra Chen sat alone in the communication chamber, her face lit only by the soft green glow of the encrypted console. She had been running long-range scans for days, following a strange signal that didn't match any known starship pattern. It wasn't distress. It wasn't trade. It was coded and buried beneath layers of quantum encryption. Most officers would have dismissed it, marked it as noise, but not Lyra. She had seen enough of the galaxy to know that real threats didn't come with warnings. And tonight, her instincts screamed louder than any alarm. As the message slowly decrypted, line by line, her calm, calculating eyes narrowed. The words were cold, clinical, and horrifying. Protocol 88 Strategic Erasure of Species H-23. She didn't need to guess what that meant. H-23 was Earth. Humanity had always been listed that way in the Galactic Council's archives, a technical label among thousands. The message wasn't just classified, it was forbidden, marked as Level Omega clearance, which only the top 10 members of the Galactic Council were allowed to access. And yet, here it was, bleeding onto her screen like a ghost that had clawed its way through layers of digital firewalls to be heard. It wasn't a warning. It was a decision. A secret vote had been taken among the Council's elite. They had decided humanity was too dangerous to be left alone. Too curious. Too fast. Too bold. And now, with Earth's recent development of stable, faster-than-light travel, it was clear someone, maybe several someones, saw that as a threat to the carefully balanced power structure of the galaxy. Erasing humanity wasn't a punishment. It was prevention. A cold solution to a rising power they couldn't control. Lyra's breath caught in her throat, but she didn't freeze. Her fingers moved quickly, transferring the decoded message into a secure black box packet, prepping it for a stealth relay to Earth Command. She had no doubt that the moment this signal had been intercepted, her position was marked. The Galactic Council didn't leave loose ends. As she confirmed the packet transfer and initiated the backup relay, her ship's AI spoke in a low tone. Commander, unidentified vessel approaching at high speed. No transponder signature. Estimated interception in 2 minutes. Her mind raced. That was no traitor, no wanderer. That was a hunter. Probably cloaked. Probably council. Probably sent to make sure this very moment never happened. She stood, voice steady, and called to the bridge. Red alert. Evasive protocol, Beta 7. Engage stealth matrix and prepare to dive. Her crew, a small team of specialists, handpicked for long-range recon missions, responded without question. Within seconds, Indigo Wasp banked hard and angled toward the nearby gas giant Zaros V, IIA swirling storm planet with electromagnetic fields strong enough to hide even their energy signature for a short while. The stars outside shifted as the ship entered the upper cloud layer, buffeted by fierce turbulence and static bursts. The enemy ship followed, cutting through the storm like a predator on scent. Lyra stood at the central console, watching the enemy's trajectory adjust with terrifying precision. This wasn't a warning chase. They were here to kill. Not capture. Not question. Terminate. A shiver ran through her spine, not from fear, but from the realization of how close humanity had come to being wiped out without ever knowing why. She knew now. And if this message reached Earth in time, others would know too. They could prepare. Resist. Survive. Just then, a deep tremor shook the ship. One of the engines had been clipped. Containment breach in aft reactor chamber, shouted Ensign Malik over the comms. Sparks rained down from the ceiling as the ship's lights flickered. Lyra knew what had to be done. Get the black box into the escape pod, she ordered. That data is the only thing that matters now. Her crew hesitated for a heartbeat, then moved. Every one of them understood. No one questioned the cost. As explosions rippled through the rear corridors. Lyra personally escorted the pod bay officer, a young comm specialist named Eli Dorn, into the capsule. You've trained for this, she told him. You know the extraction protocols. Get to Karen Prime. Find someone who can broadcast the truth. Someone who isn't under council control. Eli's face was pale, but he nodded. What about you, Commander? He asked. Lyra smiled, a tired but proud smile. I'm gonna buy you time. She slapped the launch pad and the pod fired away, disappearing into the storm below. Back on the bridge, the AI confirmed the pod's stealth path was active. The enemy ship hadn't noticed. Yet. Lyra took the helm, turned the ship, and accelerated straight at the hunter vessel. If she was going down, she was going down loud. The last thing she saw before impact was the massive silhouette of the enemy cruiser as her ship slammed into its underbelly like a blazing comet. Far below, unnoticed, a tiny escape pod drifted quietly through the cloud layers, hidden by the storm. Inside, Eli Dorn clutched the black box data module to his chest, unaware that the future of Earth, and perhaps the entire balance of power in the galaxy, now rested in his hands. And high above, in the darkness beyond the clouds, something had begun, a truth uncovered, a war unknowingly declared, and a silence shattered by a single intercepted whisper in the void. The escape pod streaked silently through the orange clouds of the gas giant, its heat shields glowing from the descent, but it remained hidden from scanners, cloaked in the electromagnetic chaos of Zaros VI's upper atmosphere. Inside, Eli Dorn sat hunched over the black box module, his hands trembling, not from the rough ride, but from the weight of what he was carrying. He had trained for emergencies, practice drills in zero-G and simulations of enemy contact, but nothing had prepared him for being the sole survivor of a doomed crew, carrying a message that could either save or doom an entire species. Outside the pod's reinforced window, flashes of lightning lit up the sky, momentarily revealing the dark curves of enormous storm waves. Somewhere above, the Council's hunter ship was probably still searching, but the storm covered Eli's path, at least for now. His mission was clear: reach Karen Prime, a politically neutral trade world with a powerful independent media network. It was the only place in this part of the galaxy where the truth had a chance of being heard before it was buried. Earth had to know. The galaxy had to know. But as the pod's guidance system finally locked onto a safe trajectory and initiated the long burn toward Karen Prime, Eli didn't see the second signal blinking on the navigation screen, an incoming ping, silent and encrypted, bouncing through the ion storm towards something cold and waiting. Elsewhere, in the heart of the Sol system, Admiral Javier Vasquez stood motionless inside Earth Command's top security chamber, watching the decrypted message from Lyra's black box stream across the screen. Around him, members of the Emergency Terran Council sat in stunned silence. The vote was real. The threat was real. They had been living under the illusion of alliance and protection, trusting that the Galactic Council would act in fairness, only to find out that their so-called guardians had secretly voted for humanity's removal. This was not war, Vasquez said, his voice low and sharp. This was planned extinction. Some members demanded immediate retaliation. Others pushed for diplomacy, suggesting that perhaps it was a mistake, a test, or a bluff. But Vasquez had served in too many distant systems, seen too many sudden accidents on new colonies, to believe in coincidence. The Council had moved against them, quietly and cleanly, but now their secrecy had cracked. Humanity had one chance to act, not with weapons, but with truth. They needed allies. And to get them, they needed the right voice in the right place, someone who could show the galaxy what had almost happened in silence. Back aboard the enemy hunter ship, cloaked and drifting like a shark in the upper orbit of Karen Prime, a Varelian commander watched as a single human escape pod broke from the storm and entered the edge of controlled space. The hunter ship had lost contact with Indigo Wasp. Its target had collided with the cruiser during a final desperate maneuver, destroying both ships. But the real danger, they now realized, had been the small escape pod launched seconds before impact. Their scans had picked it up too late. Now, it was headed toward the surface of a media-rich, neutral world. If the human inside managed to transmit what they carried, the operation would be exposed. Not just to Earth, but to every species in the quadrant. And that, the Council could not allow. Eli landed just outside the city of Marnock Reach. Karen Prime's capital, in a rundown freight yard under the cover of night. He slipped into the crowd, keeping the black box module hidden in a rugged satchel slung over his shoulder. He had no weapons, no backup, and no local contacts, only a name. Varax Mune, a former council diplomat turned journalist, known for exposing corruption and speaking truth on channels too small to be blocked but big enough to cause real damage. Eli had read his reports during training. Varax was blunt, stubborn, and fearless. And now he was humanity's only hope. Moving quickly through narrow alleys and past neon-lit market stalls, Eli reached the broadcasting district. But something felt wrong. Too many shadows moved just out of view. Too many eyes lingered a moment too long. He wasn't just being watched, he was being followed. He ducked into a back alley, slipping through a maintenance door into the lower levels of an old comms tower. As he climbed the service stairs, footsteps echoed behind him. Someone was inside. A sudden voice called out, robotic and cold, "Surrender the data." Eli didn't stop. He reached the top level and burst into the main studio where a tall, red-skinned alien with metallic implants turned from a glowing console. Varax Mune stared at him with narrowed eyes. "You better have a good reason for crashing into my office at midnight, boy," he growled. Eli dropped the satchel and pulled out the black box. "They voted to erase us," he said, his voice shaking. "The Council. Protocol 88. I have the proof." Varax's expression changed instantly. He snatched the module and slid it into a reader. His eyes widened. Stars and shadows. "It's real," he muttered. But before he could say more, the lights flickered. Then, silence. The building went dark. From the window, Eli saw a sleek black ship land on the rooftop nearby. Armored figures began descending. "They're here," he whispered. "They found me." Varax grabbed a blaster from his desk. "Good. Let them come." The two of them slipped into the emergency stairwell, moving down fast, the black box now wired into Varax's portable transmitter. "If we can get to my field van," he said, "we can send this to every open channel station across the system. Once it's out there, no one can bury it." Gunfire echoed above them. The hunters were closing in. One wrong turn, one slip, and they'd be dead. But Eli ran faster, not for himself, but for Earth. For Lyra. For the truth. As they burst into the street, the sky lit up with searchlights. Drones circled overhead. The hunter ship had deployed a full containment team. But Varax's van was only 50 meters away. They ran as blasts tore into the pavement beside them. Varax shouted over the roar of engines, "Plug the data and broadcast starts in 60 seconds." Eli dove into the passenger seat, jamming the black box into the uplink console. The system whirred to life. On screens all over Karen Prime, and soon the Quadrant, the message began to play. Images of the council chamber, vote records, classified orders, and Lyra's final message. Somewhere in orbit, the Varelian commander watched in silence. The data was out. The lie had been broken. And now, nothing would be the same again. As said, the transmission spread like fire across Karen Prime's networks, and then into the subspace web that connected the outer systems. Something irreversible happened. People began to talk. Not just humans, but beings from dozens of other species tuned in as the evidence unfolded. Video of the Council's hidden vote, data logs from secure chambers, encryption keys that matched known protocols. The message was undeniable. The Galactic Council had not only discussed the extermination of humanity, they had voted on it. At first, the reaction was disbelief. Then came the fear. And finally, the outrage. In the crowded media station van parked in a dark alley behind the comm tower, Eli Dorn watched it all unfold with wide eyes. He had no idea how far the signal had gone, or how many were watching, but he could feel the shift in the air. People were listening. And somewhere, in that buzzing chaos, the galaxy's perfect silence had been broken. But even with the message out, they were far from safe. The Council would not take this humiliation quietly. They would come hard, and they would come fast. Already, scout drones buzzed overhead, scanning for the van's heat signature. Varex's Mune sat beside him, calmly sipping a hot drink as if they weren't about to be hunted down. "They'll track the signal's origin," Varex said. "That gives us maybe 10 minutes before they triangulate this location." Eli stared at him. "And then what?" Varex raised an eyebrow. "Then we find someone who's louder than we are." Not far from Corinne Prime's orbital belt, a massive freighter known as the Quintari Dawn floated silently. It wasn't a warship or a council ship. It was a diplomatic vessel, used by traveling peace speakers and interspecies advocates. On board was someone who, until now, had stayed far from politics. A tall, six-eyed being named Oren Jax, half human and half Thalkai. Known across neutral worlds as a speaker of truth, one who never took sides. He had once mediated peace between warring colonies in the Trilos system, and he was trusted by millions. He was not a soldier. He was not a leader. But now, in this moment, he was exactly who the galaxy needed. The Quintari Dawn had picked up the transmission and immediately locked onto its source. Oren sat quietly in his meditation chamber, watching the footage play again and again. He didn't speak until the final moments Lyra's message, her face bloodied but unbroken, saying the words no one else dared. "We are not the threat. You are. Because you fear what we might become." Oren reached for his comms. "Set course for Corinne Prime. I want the ones who sent this message on my ship before the sun rises." His crew, though nervous, obeyed. Within an hour, a transport shuttle landed in the alleyway where Eli and Varex were hiding. A tall female pilot stepped out, scanning the darkness before saying one simple line: "If you want to live long enough to see the end of this, come with me now." With no other options, they followed her onto the ship, taking only the black box module and a backup drive. As the shuttle lifted off, they saw hunter drones swarm the alley behind them, seconds too late. On board the Quintari Dawn, the tension was thick. Oren Jax was taller than Eli had imagined, his Thalkai heritage giving him a strong but calm presence. He spoke softly but with authority. "The galaxy listens to me," he said. "But only if I speak the right words. What you've shown me is powerful, but it's not enough." Eli looked confused. "Not enough? What more do you need?" Oren turned to face a large holomap showing major communication relays across the sector. "You've told the truth. Now we must prove it to those still in doubt. And to do that, we need someone from inside the council." The idea was crazy, dangerous, but it was the only path left. Somewhere within the Galactic Council, not everyone had agreed to the vote. The records showed at least 3 abstentions, and 1 anonymous no. If they could find that person, someone who hadn't voted to erase humanity, they could confirm the message's accuracy from inside. Oren had contacts, but even he couldn't pierce the Council's inner walls without help. That's when Varex offered a name. "Ambassador Talrin," he said slowly. "She vanished 6 months ago, left her post claiming health reasons. But before she left, she sent a private message to my secure inbox, said something was coming that would fracture the skies. I thought it was poetry. Now I think she knew." The ship changed course immediately, heading toward the ice-covered world of Drelos V, where Talrin had last been seen. But speed was not on their side. News of the broadcast had reached the Council's high core, and response fleets were already in motion. Orders were given to intercept the Quintari Dawn before it reached Drelos. If the crew survived, if they reached the ambassador, if they got her to speak, the entire Council's grip on power could collapse. As the ship neared Drelos, strange signals filled the air. Distorted, scrambled transmissions, like broken warnings. Oren's crew picked up the fragments. "Don't trust the ice watching. She's not alone." The message made no sense, but it didn't have to. Not yet. They landed in the icy plains near a research outpost built into a cliff. No signs of life. No movement. Just wind and snow. Eli, Oren, and 2 guards made their way into the compound, following heat traces and faint life signs. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Not from temperature, but from something else, something that made the air feel heavy. Then, in the last room of the facility, they found her. Ambassador Talrin. Alive, barely. Her eyes burned with defiance. You brought it out, didn't you? She said weakly. The truth. I told them this would happen. Orin stepped forward. We need you to tell the galaxy what you saw, what you heard. Speak with me. Stand with us. Talrin shook her head. They'll kill me before I finish one sentence. But they won't kill you, Orin. Not yet. I'll give you what you need: a voice recording, biometric proof, and my coded seal. But you must run. You must run now. As she spoke, alarms blared across the compound. Enemy ships had broken through orbit. Drones were descending. The Council was coming to silence their last chance. And so, once again, they ran not away from danger, but straight into the storm. Because now, they carried more than truth. They carried the voice of the Council's conscience. The skies above Drelos V burned red as Council interceptor drones cut through the clouds like blades. Alarms echoed through the icy outpost, while Eli Dorn and Orin Jax sprinted across the frost-covered landing platform. Talrin's sealed testimony clutched tightly in Orin's hand. Behind them, the ambassador stayed hidden inside the reinforced bunker, refusing to escape for her own safety. She had done her part. Now it was their turn to make her voice echo across the stars. The Quentari Dawn waited at the far end of the cliff, engines humming, shields barely holding against the first wave of pulse blasts. Snow exploded into steam as stray shots struck the frozen ground. The pilot yelled over the comms, warning them that enemy drop pods were closing in fast. There would be no second chance. With hearts pounding and lungs burning, they pushed through the final stretch of open ground. Eli slipped once, rolling across the ice before scrambling back up. But they made it just as two drones dropped from the sky, their weapons charging. The guards opened fire, covering the last few meters as the ramp hissed shut and the ship lifted into the storm, banking hard to avoid incoming fire. Inside the ship, Verax immediately connected Talrin's data to the primary transmitter. Her message was raw, powerful, and personal. She named names, quoted meeting logs, and confirmed that the vote to erase humanity had been real. She spoke of fear, of jealousy, of old grudges that had twisted powerful minds against an entire species. Then came the final blow. She revealed a secret protocol buried deep in Council law. If more than 20% of core systems declared distrust in the Council's judgment, a vote of no confidence could be triggered, forcing a complete reevaluation of leadership. Until now, no species had dared speak out. But humanity's survival had become more than just a human cause. It had become a symbol for all smaller species living under quiet fear. Eli watched the message spread in real time. Stations that had once ignored Earth now replayed the data on loops. Protests began across neutral planets. On faraway mining colonies, non-human workers refused Council orders. A spark had turned into flame, and the fire was spreading. But hope came at a cost. As the Quentari Dawn made its way toward Earth, the Council declared martial control over key space lanes. Trade routes were closed. Neutral relays were seized. And in the outer systems, Council fleets began containment procedures, arresting humans and their allies without trial. It was no longer about silence, it was about control. Back on Earth, Admiral Vasquez watched the galaxy react with a cold, calculating stare. He had seen enough. We've been quiet too long, he said. Let the Council see that we are not prey. Across human space, sleeper defense networks lit up for the first time in decades. Warships hidden in asteroid fields powered up. Defense grids were activated on colonies that had only known peace. And above Earth, the massive dreadnought Aegis Dawn emerged from high orbit, its hull gleaming like a blade drawn from its sheath. But this was not a declaration of war. It was a warning. Humanity was standing tall, and they would not fall quietly. Orin Jax, now carrying the weight of two truths, the vote and Talrin's statement, prepared for a galaxy-wide broadcast. It would be different this time. Not just a leak, but a declaration. A demand. He stood before the main transmission deck, surrounded by 100 different media representatives from every race that still dared listen. The message was clear. The Council had betrayed its duty, not only to humans, but to the very idea of unity. And if they were not stopped, they would do it again. Oren's words, calm but strong, carried weight. "This is not just about Earth," he said. "This is about every voice that's been silenced, every vote stolen, every lie told in the name of order." The broadcast reached every corner of known space. Some species remained silent, still afraid. Others stood up. One by one, they began to speak, echoing the call for a vote of no confidence. And then came the unexpected. The Drevians, one of the Council's most loyal allies, released their own hidden recordings, proof that they, too, had been threatened with extinction centuries ago, silenced with false treaties and staged rebellions. They had stayed quiet out of fear, but now, inspired by humanity's defiance, they stepped forward. Other species followed. The Council's foundation cracked. Inside the Council chambers, the mood shifted from control to panic. Diplomats turned on each other, blaming leaks, spies, old alliances. But the truth was simple: they had underestimated humanity's will to survive, and, more importantly, to unite others around a shared sense of injustice. Meanwhile, as the political storm grew, the Quenary Dawn approached the outer edge of soul space. A blockade waited 3 Council warships, each carrying enough firepower to tear the ship apart. Oren made contact, requesting safe passage under diplomatic protection. The warships didn't respond. Eli looked to the pilot, who shook her head grimly. They were not going to let them through. That's when Earth made its move. The Aegis Dawn, along with 6 stealth cruisers, emerged from the shadows of Jupiter's rings. Without a word, they positioned themselves between the Council fleet and the Quintari Dawn. Admiral Vasquez opened a channel. "If you fire on that ship," he said, "you declare war on the human race. And we do not fight to lose." There was silence. A long, dangerous pause. Then, slowly, the Council ships turned. No weapons fired. No words exchanged. They retreated one by one. The message was clear: humanity would not back down. The Quinary Dawn landed safely on Earth. Oren and Eli stepped out into a world changed. Crowds greeted them, not just with cheers, but with resolve. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. A coalition began to form, not of soldiers, but of voices. Journalists, diplomats, scientists, even artists from across the galaxy who had seen what power did when left unchecked. Humanity's role was no longer just survival. It was leadership, not of dominance, but of unity through truth. And far away, hidden deep in a Council archive, a young analyst watched the chaos unfold and made a quiet note. "The humans," he wrote, "do not kneel. They rise." The stars were no longer silent. After Oren Jax's broadcast and the unity shown by Earth and its new allies, the galaxy had shifted in a way that could not be undone. The Galactic Council, once the ultimate authority, now sat under a storm of rising doubts and growing fear. Across thousands of systems, questions echoed in every court, every news channel, and every street. Who gave the Council the right to decide who lived and who didn't? What other secrets had been buried beneath their polished words and promises of peace? The vote to erase humanity was no longer just a scandal. It had become a symbol of the Council's darkest nature. On Earth, people no longer waited for orders from distant stars. They prepared themselves for what might come next, not just with weapons, but with a new kind of strength, confidence. For the first time in generations, humans didn't see themselves as the weakest species among the stars. They saw themselves as survivors, as leaders of a cause greater than their own. Eli Dorn, who once feared even speaking the truth, now stood among voices far louder than his own. And yet, he knew the story wasn't over. The Council had not fallen. Not yet. Its core members remained in hiding, locked in the floating fortress of Veltrax Prime, protected by ancient defense systems and surrounded by fleets of loyalist ships. No court could reach them. No protest could break their walls. But the truth had done something even stronger. It had planted seeds inside those walls. Officers once loyal to the Council began asking questions. Advisors disappeared. Encrypted messages leaked out, not from spies, but from people inside who wanted change. Whispers of rebellion grew louder, and all of them looked to one place for guidance: Earth.in response, Earth called for something that hadn't happened in over a century, a galactic summit. Not in some distant council-controlled chamber, but on neutral ground, Station Aetheris, a massive orbital ring abandoned decades ago during the Plague Wars. Once thought too unstable to be used again, it was now being restored with help from engineers across multiple species. Oranjax, leading the effort, believed that if peace was to return, it had to be born in the ruins of old betrayals. Humanity offered its full support, not just through technology, but with trust. They invited their old enemies, the quiet observers, and even the ones who had voted against them, offering a chance for everyone to speak freely. The message was simple: come, speak, or be left behind. But as the summit drew near, danger followed. The council, though weakened, was not powerless. Hidden factions began sabotaging communication lines. Supplies bound for Aetheris vanished. And worst of all, a massive explosion rocked a diplomatic convoy carrying representatives from 3 neutral systems. Many believed it to be an accident until a recording was found, showing a drone coded with council encryption striking the ship moments before impact. It was no accident. It was a warning. The council would not go down quietly. Still, the summit continued. One by one, ships arrived at Aetheris. Some came with fleets, others alone. Inside the repaired chambers, banners from 100 worlds fluttered, and for the first time in a long time, voices of different kinds shared one space without fear. Oranjax stood at the center, calling for justice not through war, but through revelation. And when Talrin's full testimony was played on the main screen uncut, unfiltered, something inside the room shifted. You could feel the weight of truth pressing on every heart. She spoke of shadow meetings, of forced silence, of the quiet manipulation used to control weaker species. The council had claimed they acted for peace, but their peace was built on chains. Then Eli Dorn spoke, not as a soldier or a hero, but as a survivor. He didn't demand vengeance. He demanded recognition. "We don't want to burn the galaxy down," he said. "We want to rebuild it right." His voice, once small, now carried across the chamber like thunder. But just as the final vote to disband the current council structure was about to begin, alarms rang through Station Aetheris. A fleet had arrived. Not a peaceful one. The last loyal arm of the council, known as the Obsidian Ring, had broken away from their leaders and decided to stop the summit by force. They believed that fear was the only way to restore order. Their ships opened fire without warning, targeting the station's power core. Chaos erupted. Delegates were rushed to safety. Defense systems activated too slowly. And once again, it was Earth that stood between survival and ruin. The Aegis Dawn, along with ships from the Drevians and Thalkai, formed a living wall around the station. The battle that followed was short but brutal. The Obsidian Ring was strong, but not united. Many of its ships hesitated, refusing to fire on unarmed diplomats. Several captains turned their weapons off mid-fight. In the end, only a few of the attackers made it out alive, fleeing into deep space. The summit survived. In the silence after battle, the vote was cast. Over 60% of attending systems voted for the council's dissolution. New elections were planned, built on open law and equal voice. A rotating council of representatives would take its place. No species allowed more than one voice. No decision made behind closed doors. Earth, once on the edge of extinction, was now among the founders of this new order. But they didn't claim power. Instead, they passed a resolution calling for unity, promising to never forget what almost happened in silence. Back on Earth, Eli stood on the balcony of the new Galactic Hall, watching stars rise over a peaceful sky. Verax Mune stood beside him, quiet as ever. "We did it," Eli said softly. "No," Verax corrected, "you did it. By telling the truth. And standing tall when others bowed." Somewhere far away, former council members now lived in hiding, their names lost in the new order's records. Some would be hunted. Others would vanish. But the system that protected them was gone. And deep in space, a new signal began to pulse, not one of warning, but of welcome. The galaxy had changed. And humanity, once nearly erased, had become its echo of reckoning.